You were the best soldier in every unit you served. You also drove every commanding officer slightly insane. Not because you couldn't follow orders, because you could see 3 moves ahead. And it was genuinely painful watching someone give the wrong one. You never said that out loud. 20 years of discipline. But you thought it every single time. And when you finally walked out of the army, you thought civilian life was going to be different. New environment. New people. Finally a room big enough for what you're running. It wasn't. And somewhere around 50, sitting in a meeting where you already knew the outcome before the agenda was read, you felt something you couldn't name. Not boredom. Not frustration. Something older than that. The feeling of a processor that has never once been run at full capacity. In 40 years. Not even once. I'm Robert, retired soldier. And today I want to get into the psychology of the Gen X soldier who was never broken. Just never given the right size room. In 2018, evolutionary psychologist Satoshi Kanazawa at the London School of Economics published findings that stopped people cold. 15,000 adults studied. Long-term survey. Statistically significant results. For average people, more social interaction meant higher life satisfaction. For high IQ individuals, more social interaction meant lower life satisfaction. Not neutral, lower. High intelligence evolved as an adaptation for solving problems the human brain had never encountered before. High IQ people don't need the tribal safety net the way average brains do. In fact, the tribal safety net actively gets in the way. The problem was never that you couldn't connect. You kept connecting in rooms built for a different kind of mind. They sold Gen X the same deal twice. First time childhood, second time the army. You will still be the one in every room processing 3 layers deeper than everyone around you. Just the operating system, running exactly as built, whether the environment was ready or not. It started in an empty house in 1979. Key around the neck. Nobody home. Problem on the table. No instructions. No adult. No script. Just a young brain being trained by necessity in the only curriculum that worked. In 2018, Norwegian researchers Bernt Bratsberg and Ole Rogenberg studied 730,000 military conscripts. IQ scores reached their absolute historical peak for men born around 1975, right in the center of Gen X. Then they compared brothers, same household, same parents, same genetics. The patterns still held. Something in the environment during those specific years produced something it has never produced since. There's a book in your house right now. Spine cracked. Pages worn. Margin notes in your own handwriting. Maybe it's Marcus Aurelius. Maybe it's Hemingway. Maybe it's something nobody in your unit expected you to care about. You read it alone. Late at night. After everyone else had long stopped thinking for the day. That book was the one room in your whole day that was actually the right size. Psychology research on high IQ individuals consistently finds 11 habits, behaviors so specific and so recognizable. If 7 or more describe you, you already know exactly what this video is actually about. Habit 1. They spend significant time alone and need it more than most people will ever understand. Not because they dislike people, their prefrontal cortex functions most effectively in quiet environments. For this brain, solitude isn't loneliness. It's fuel. Habit 2. Their mind never fully switches off. Not ever. Not even close. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski called it psychomotor overexcitability, a drive to think that doesn't have a natural off switch. His partner calls it overthinking. He calls it Tuesday. Habit 3. They feel things more deeply than they ever show. A study in the journal Intelligence found higher IQ correlated with significantly greater emotional reactivity and depth. Not cold, not distant, just running a higher security clearance on what gets in. Habit 4. They say I don't know more comfortably than anyone in the room. Lower competence produces overconfidence because the person doesn't know enough to see the complexity that exists. So when a high IQ person says I don't know, it's not hesitation, it's precision. Habit 5. They struggle to find people who think at their level and stop trying to explain why. Psychologist Layla Hollingworth called this the problem of stimulus poverty, not arrogance. A quiet longing for someone who could follow all the way to the bottom of an idea without turning back. A lot of who he actually is never enters the conversation at all. Habit 6. They change their minds when the evidence changes. Without drama, without announcement. They don't experience changing their mind as a threat. They experience it as accuracy. Habit 7. They observe far more than they ever say. They listen to what isn't being said as much as to what is. The quiet observing person is frequently assumed to have the least to contribute. In reality, they usually have the most complete picture of what's actually happening. Habit 8. They procrastinate hardest on the work that matters most. A high IQ brain comprehends the full scope of what excellence would require before beginning. The procrastination isn't an absence of care, it's the presence of too much of it. The work that never starts is almost always the work that matters most. He knows that. That's the whole problem. Habit 9. They get bored faster than almost anyone around them. Neuroscientific research linked higher cognitive ability to higher baseline dopamine activity in the prefrontal cortex. When that challenge disappears, the signal drops sharply. The restlessness isn't a mood, it's a physiological response. The brain wasn't being ungrateful, it was running a search for what it was built to find. Habit 10. They question themselves more than anyone would expect. Not because they're fragile, because they understand complexity too well to feel entirely certain about anything. Intelligence doesn't produce certainty. It produces a more precise map of how much territory remains unexplored. The doubt isn't a sign of lesser intelligence. It's often the most reliable signature of a greater one. Habit 11. They carry a quiet sense of not quite belonging. In every room, every organization, everywhere. Not a dramatic alienation, a subtle ongoing awareness of being slightly out of sync with the immediate environment. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi found individuals with greatest intellectual capacity describe their inner lives as most complex and hardest to share. Not because they were uniquely suffering, because they were experiencing life at a level of detail most people around them weren't. The high IQ Gen X soldier who never quite fit wasn't experiencing failure. He was experiencing the most precise symptom of operating at the upper end. The room was never broken. He was just always the most expensive piece of equipment in it. Here's what nobody talks about. Not the gift side, the cost side. Running this processor through 20 years of military service, through the bureaucracy, the politics, the commanders less capable than you. Through the briefings where you already knew the answer before the question was finished. Through 20 more years of civilian life, watching people confuse motion with progress every single day. That accumulates. Not like trauma, like friction. The constant low-grade friction of running at full capacity in environments built for half that. His brain processes everything deeply, including the cost, including 40 years of calibrating himself down. And somewhere around 50, he understands for the first time why he's always been so tired in ways he couldn't explain. Not combat fatigue, something quieter. The fatigue of running the most expensive processor in every room. While everyone around him ran on significantly less, and nobody ever noticed the difference in the electricity bill. In the field, we had a word for this. Combat ineffective. Not broken, not done, not a failure. A system that needs a resupply and a new mission calibrated to what it's actually running. For 40 years, we asked what was wrong with the soldier who never quite fit. What if that was always the wrong question? What if the real question is, what environment was designed for the mind he's running? The first one sends you looking inward for a flaw that was never there. The second one sends you looking outward for the right room. And the right room is one you're going to have to build yourself. Dr. Linda Krieger-Silverman at the Gifted Development Center has spent decades studying what high intelligence looks like from the inside. She calls it asynchronous development, advanced cognitive processing moving faster than the social environment can keep pace with. The result, a person who has always felt slightly out of phase. Not broken, not antisocial, not difficult, just running on a different internal clock than the room around him. The most intelligent people in any room carry the most genuine doubt, not because they're less capable, because they're more honest about unmapped territory. Science finally caught up to what the field already knew. You were never the problem. You were the most capable asset in every room you ever entered. The room just never came with the right manual. For most of my service, I thought the problem was me. Too much going on inside. Too aware of things I couldn't turn off. Too tired from conversations that cost more than they should have. I told myself it was fine. I was very good at fine. 20 years of practice. I sat in a transition briefing once. The counselor asked me what my hobbies were. I listed 7. She stopped writing after 2. I understood then. This was going to take longer than I thought. Then I read the research. And the research said, that's not a problem. That's wiring. Built in an empty house in the late 70s. Refined over 20 years in conditions most people will never be asked to operate in. A mismatch you understand is a problem you can solve. A flaw you believe in is just a sentence you keep serving. Stop explaining yourself to rooms not built for the conversation. Find the 2 people who can go all the way to the bottom of an idea. Not 20 people. Not a community. 2. Invest everything in those 2. That is the complete social strategy. Give the background process something real to work on. Your brain does not have an off switch. Stop fighting that. Give it a problem with actual stakes. A question without a clean answer. Something requiring the full processor at full capacity. Stop measuring yourself against the environments that never fit. The meeting that bored you, not evidence of failure. The room that was always slightly too small, that was the room. Not you. Never you. Drop a comment below. How many of the 11 habits described you? And which one hit the hardest? Share this with one man who spent his whole life being the most capable person in rooms that never quite knew what to do with him. He won't ask for this, but he's been waiting for someone to say it for a very long time. The room was never broken. It was just built for a different size. The uniform came off. The processor didn't. Drive on.